do have any questions throughout this, which people usually do, if you could just let us know in the chat function. So in the video you're watching, to the right hand side, or if you hover over to get the controls, there is a chat option where you can post messages. If you could post messages or questions in there, or anything that you need to know, and we can loop back around at the end of this and answer those for you. It's just that means we can get through the presentation, tell you everything you need to know, and then come back and answer those questions without it kind of disrupting Mike's flow. Anyway, on that note, I shall introduce Mike. So Mike, are you there?
Yes.
There he is. Wonderful. Excellent. So I'm going to hand over to Mike. As I said, if you've got any questions, or if anything's not working, or you can't hear anything or what have you, post it in the chat and we will, Michelle and I will try and answer you. But otherwise, over to you, Mike. Thanks very much.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen. So Chris, if you could just let me know that everyone can see it.
Yeah, there it is. I can see it.
Cool. So yeah, we're going to go through quite quickly just the kind of main elements of LinkedIn ads that you should be aware of if you're creating your first campaign, or you may have run a few in the past. So for those of you that haven't actually got a ads campaign manager yet, you'll need to set one up. So it used to be under work, so it might still be here for you, because this is the first time I've seen this little advertise button. But yeah, so if you click on advertise, you'll come through to the campaign manager, and you'll probably have to set up a new account and link it to your company page. And then once you've done that, you will come through to this page where you will see historical performance of your old campaigns, any other accounts that you're linked to, and then the actual ads that are running. So then to get started, you just go to create campaign. And LinkedIn is quite good at walking you through the process of what you actually need to do to set up the campaign, and it tries to help you to get the most out of your money, and it does that through the objective that you set. So these all have different ways of optimizing the campaigns. So if you're looking to raise awareness of a new product or a new service, you're probably best off going with the brand awareness campaigns. So this will typically try and reach as many people as possible, again raising awareness, versus the consideration phase, which is typically people that may have either heard of you before, or they're in need of your product or service. So you can send those directly through to your website, or get them to engage with your ads, or watch your videos. So again, LinkedIn's algorithm will just work as hard as possible to get as many people to engage with whichever you select. And then finally, which is more lower funnel users, comes under the conversions. So you've got a few different types. You've got lead generation, which is basically where in LinkedIn, if somebody clicks on your ad, an automatic form will be pre-filled. So it will have their name, their email address, and that's associated with the LinkedIn account. And then you can put in additional fields that you want them to fill in. So obviously, the more fields you get them to fill in, the less likely they are to fill it. So you just got to kind of consider that when you're building out your campaign. And then you've got website conversions. So this is when you're sending the user to a landing page and you want them to take action. So you'll need to set up conversion actions for this, which we'll go over. And then the final one is job applicants, which we won't go over because that's quite specific. And then you've also got the title of the campaign, which is important for when you come to look back at campaigns performance in the future. So it's important to label them as clearly as possible so that anyone looking knows what this is about. So we're going to name it webinar 2406, so that people know. So if I logged in, I could see what was happening, and other people would as well. And yeah, so for the focus of this webinar, we're just going to use more of a B2B approach, as this is what LinkedIn's typically used for. But I'll also touch on things that B2C brands can do as well. Cool. So yeah, most commonly used is probably website visits, just driving as much traffic as you can to your landing page. So yeah, that's the first main element of LinkedIn ads. Then one of the most important things is your audience targeting. So the benefit of LinkedIn versus other paid social platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, is the demographics that you can target. So obviously you've got location, but then you've got lots more specific targeting based on the user's employment. And just worth noting, as I'm making changes, if you just keep an eye on the forecasted results, so this is based off of your budget and your audience, what LinkedIn expects you to actually generate. So at the moment, because we're literally just targeting people in the UK, it's seeing that we could possibly get these results. But then if I change that to, say, London, you can see it change straight away. Okay, cool. So then we don't want to just target broadly to people in London. So we're going to narrow our audience further. And this brings you to the section where you can see all of the information on companies, demographics, education, interests, and more. So just as an example, if you click on company, you can target people based on the industry, specific companies, the company size. So this is all, you can layer your audiences so that you're either broadening them or making them really specific. So if you're a small advertising agency who want to deal with local businesses, you may then go into company size and just want to target small employers, or vice versa. If you want to target big enterprise companies, you may want to just target the larger audience size, larger employment size. Or if you leave them blank, it targets everything. So I won't go through all of these, but yeah, it's definitely good to just have a look through yourselves, because there's tons of stuff that you wouldn't think is possible. But then what you can also do, which is quite good, if you want to target people with specific job titles, or yeah, say you've got an audience in mind but you don't know where to find it, you can just actually search for it. So as we're focusing this on promoting this kind of webinar, we might be interested in people that are marketing managers. So at the moment we've got or, so this isn't making them more specific, this is just broadening the audience. So we can reduce those, and then we can see that marketing managers in London, there's around 40,000 people that we could reach. So then if we were to broaden this out more, it also gives you suggestions. But yeah, then we can broaden this to people interested in specific things. So yeah, we might choose marketing and advertising and select all of them, or you can go in to be more specific. So we're more focused on digital marketing, so we may choose to just target digital marketing and remove all the rest of them. Then, as you've probably noticed here, you can see the segment breakdown. So this at the moment is looking at the function of those users. You can also look at, again, the company size, industry, seniority. But yeah, I find function is something that is a good way of reducing your wasted spend, because yeah, if you're looking at targeting marketing related people, that may cover people in sales and business development who potentially aren't going to be wanting to receive your services, they're actually wanting to sell to you. So that's a good place to start with excluding audiences. So we may look to exclude, people with business development skill set. So again, depending on which audiences you select to target, you then are reduced with what you can actually exclude. So again, if we go back into this, business development, so now, job functions, this is what we want to exclude, not member skills. And then you'll see that is removed from here. So you can get the audience to be much more targeted, but it's probably a better approach to take when you're actually looking to optimize the campaigns, not something that you want to do from the off, because you want to be very data led, and you might find that actually that job function, whilst it's quite broad, it actually gets you the people that you need to speak to as well. So then we come to the ad format. So there's lots of different variations. Typically, people use single image ad or video ads, but carousel ads are becoming more popular, especially for B2C customers, where they can either show off their products or show off more of their product features or service features. Then you've got other variations, so text ads that appear at the top or on the right hand side, I think, which we tend to not use so much. Oh, sorry, I didn't touch on this, but this is something worth noting as well. So the audience expansion, so this is giving LinkedIn freedom to advertise your ad to anyone that it thinks is relevant. So typically we would suggest that you don't enable that, so that you keep more control. And similarly for LinkedIn Audience Network, so this is just other placements of LinkedIn partner apps and websites. So typically don't enable that. And then you come to your budgets and bids. So this is, again, very important and worth considering to people that are new to LinkedIn ads. On the face of it, it is a lot more expensive than Google and Facebook, depending on your industry, where you're looking at an average cost per click is about £4 or £5, which sounds quite a lot, but the users are typically much more engaged, and the reason why they are so expensive is because they're highly sought after and the targeting is really good. So if someone is actually clicking on your ad, there's a good reason to believe that they will engage and convert into a lead or whatever you're trying to target. So you can create a daily budget or a lifetime budget. So I would suggest that you should probably look at least a £20 budget per day, so around £600 a month, just because of what I said around the cost per click. For your campaign to actually get any sort of reasonable amount of data, it's going to need to get at least 3 to 5 clicks a day minimum. And then you've got your bid strategy. So you can either leave LinkedIn to automate the bidding, which again can be quite good for new advertisers, but at VR we tend to go for a target cost per click, especially with new campaigns, just so that it gives you more control. And again, this is giving you a suggested cost per click. And again, if you keep an eye on the impressions and clicks and that sort of data as we change this. So we've gone from 878 to 4, and you can see how that impacts the overall spend per 30 days. If we change this to 1 day, so it's saying your target cost needs to be at least £5.10, $5.10. So if we change that, we'll probably see these stats change. So essentially, if you, obviously in an ideal world, you get a really low cost per click, but then you're just not going to actually, you're not going to be able to get the impressions that you need to spend your budget. So if we go for the lower end. And then, as mentioned at the beginning, depending on what your campaign objective is, you may want to actually set up conversion tracking. So yeah, I won't go over this in too much detail, but just be aware of it. So you can go in and create conversion actions based on people visiting a thank you page, for example. So contains thank you. You want to make sure and test all of the conversion actions to make sure they're accurate. And again, this will give you the best opportunity to then later on optimize your campaigns based on the audience data that's converting. Cool. So then we move on to the actual ad itself, which is, again, one of the most important parts of a LinkedIn campaign. So yeah, the kind of key points on ads is making sure that it's clear and concise, because people on LinkedIn typically don't spend a lot of time there. So you need to grab their attention really quickly and make sure that the ad is giving the user some sort of value. So there's nothing worse as a user than going onto any platform and just getting a hard sale. So that would be us going on LinkedIn, spamming everyone on LinkedIn, regardless of their interests, trying to get them to take a SEO audit or a PPC audit. It's very unlikely that people are just going to get in touch and hand over their information. Or even worse, you get people trying to set up a call with a salesperson with their first interaction. So typically that's not going to get you the best results. Things like webinars, ebooks, downloading any sort of information, it can be gated or ungated, as we've done with this webinar. It's just really good for raising awareness of your expertise in your chosen field. So yeah, those are the main points. You can either create ads, as we can see here, and you can view around destination. Okay, so we're going to use this one, which is our landing page. But yeah, so you can either create ads or you can sponsor content. I don't know what that was. So yeah, then you'll add your ad copy here, and you can see a preview of what the ad will look like across both desktop and mobile. So just as an example, so you can see what it comes up there. I've set up a LinkedIn campaign. Yeah, so these have automatically pulled through from our landing page. Descriptions typically don't appear, so I wouldn't worry too much about them. Whereas headlines appear at the bottom. And then you've got the option to add a call to action. So again, these are quite important because if we were to, what should we say? Yeah, view quotes, that would just be completely irrelevant and cause a lower click-through rate. Whereas things like learn more would probably be more effective for this because people are interested in what we're offering and they want to learn more going to the landing page. Whereas, yeah, something, if you are looking to actually generate leads, you may be looking at more so people that have been to your website or people that have been to your pricing page or something that indicates they're a lot further down the sales funnel, then you might want to use a more kind of aggressive call to action, request a demo, but depending on what your ad actually is. So then, yeah, as I mentioned, you can also select to sponsor content. So this is your organic posts. So this is one that we put out on how to set up a LinkedIn campaign, which some of you may have actually seen. And yeah, then you're good to go and review your campaign. So you can see, just double check everything. The last thing you want to do is set up your daily budget without a dot, because then you'll be spending a lot more than you'd hope. And just, yeah, double check that all of the audience targeting and everything is set up as you wish. And then if you're happy, you can launch a campaign, and then that will take you through to this page where your status will be probably pending or waiting approval, where LinkedIn is just checking the ad to make sure it's not spammy, or yeah, that it will be approved. And then from there, you'll be able to see your campaign performance as time goes by. And yeah, that's kind of everything for the beginners, how to set up a LinkedIn campaign. Just looking at the time, we won't go into the more detail on how to actually optimize campaigns, as yeah, that's more time consuming. But yeah, hopefully this gives you enough to get started. And yeah, I think that's everything from me. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Here. Hello, that was great. Thank you, Mike. Lots and lots of questions taking place during that, so let's get straight to those. Right, let's have a look. Let me just go right back to the beginning of the list. So, so Jeremy has asked. I say this every week, but I always feel a bit like a radio presenter when I do this. But Jeremy from Norwich. So Jeremy says, presumably the number of employees in the targeting demographic is based on the number of LinkedIn users who've declared that they work for the company, and therefore it might actually understate the number of real employees for that company.
Yes, yeah, potentially.
Exactly.
Although I think it might actually be, it might take into account other data sources. So it may look at more official data as opposed to just what LinkedIn says, because these platforms are very well integrated with everything now. But yeah, there is that chance that it's understating.
It's the most likely, isn't it? It's the most real number, and I've seen that. You look at you know, if you look at Vertical Leap, not everybody's active on LinkedIn, and that's fine. And so Vertical Leap, LinkedIn underplays the number of employees that Vertical Leap has got in reality.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Karina has made more of a statement, but I think it's an interesting one that you could comment on. And Karina has said that she feels LinkedIn have aligned their ad setup in a similar way to Facebook, which she feels is much easier and more intuitive than previous.
Yeah, definitely. So quite a lot of people that work in PPC hate Twitter, dislike LinkedIn, and quite like Facebook and Google because of how the platforms are just much more advanced. So yeah, typically anything Microsoft or LinkedIn is, I don't know, it's a bit harsh, but a year or so behind the competitors. But yeah, it is getting a lot better. As you can see, it does walk you through the process, but it's just really important to be aware of the little sections that kind of LinkedIn pushes you towards as a default, but typically ends up with you just spending more or reach a wider audience, so that it can kind of skew your data. You may see a lower cost per click, but they're actually coming from users that you're not directly targeting. But yeah, that's a good point.
Great. So Karina as well has said, is there a restriction on how much text can be in an ad image on LinkedIn in the same way that Facebook restricts text?
Yeah, so there is a limit, but it's less strict than Facebook. So Facebook has the 20% rule, whereas LinkedIn, I don't think there is a hard set percentage. It just gets to a point where your ad will be disapproved if it looks like it's just a blurb of ad copy, mainly because LinkedIn doesn't want to ruin its newsfeed. and keep users on LinkedIn. And if they're seeing ads like that, then it's just going to push users away.
There are differences, aren't there, across the platforms on which I'm sure we're all aware of how you would present information, because of the nuances in how those platforms are positioned, aren't they? So I think, you know, what you're saying is you can be far more, what's the word? Facebook, you tend to be quite a lot more visual and more, I don't want to say product focused, but there's that more creative element of it. I always feel, whereas LinkedIn is a professional network, and so there's the nuance of your advertising needs to kind of sit within that when you agree or disagree.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Excellent. Thomas Dorr has asked, how about things such as split testing? I guess what I mean is, I think maybe he's suggested or asking, you know, how do you go about split testing on LinkedIn, and is it worth it?
Yeah, definitely. So again, that's something that we would look at as more of an optimization level change. So we always recommend running at least 2, maybe 3 or more ads at the same time, so that you can see which ads lead to the best engagement, not only engagement, but then the kind of ad copy that you use can actually have quite a big impact on the conversion rate when the user actually reaches the landing page. So if you can get them in the right frame of mind before they've even clicked on your ad and visited your website, then that's going to really help your performance. Then also, looking at things like audience targeting, so split testing that constantly. Maybe that's looking at different job functions. But yeah, it's really important to constantly be testing at least one thing, whether that's ad copy, audiences, and then ongoing optimization, excluding job functions, for example, like I showed you earlier. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, it's that test and learn mindset is important across all digital and especially the platforms and channels we manage, and, you know, to always be testing and learning from those tests, obviously. So test and learn mindset is really important. What would you consider a healthy click-through rate for different assets? E.g., you know, what's a healthy click-through rate for promoted content versus a downloadable guide?
So yeah, that's a kind of question that we do hear quite a lot, but it's literally impossible to give you a set answer. It's just one of those things that's very dependent on the industry, the audience you're targeting, even what's going on in the outside world. So yeah, we're seeing at the beginning of when coronavirus kind of hit, we saw click-through rate on ads increase on other platforms, so Facebook, for example. But yeah, I think the best thing to do is just to monitor the forecasted results that I showed as you're building up the campaign. So I'm just in ours at the moment, and it's showing 0.23 to 0.35%, which sounds very low. But again, it's just how people engage with LinkedIn in general. It's a lot more people scrolling, and again, they're not necessarily there to be sold to, so it's worth considering that with everything you do. I've seen campaigns at the sort of 1.5%, which I'd say is considered good.
Yeah, I guess there's an important point here as well in terms of having a kind of more holistic approach to things, because if your single channel is LinkedIn, for example, and you're just relying on you know, promoted content or downloadable guides and what have you, and you're putting all of your eggs in that basket, then that's really not going to be the optimal way to do it. I mean, what you've covered today, Mike, is kind of the basics of setting up those campaigns, but there's a lot more in terms of retargeting, remarketing, taking people's email addresses, all the different tools that you can pull upon to make sure that they might not have converted there and then, but you can then re-engage with them. So it's that overall approach. And maybe you've got more you can add on there, Mike, because you're more actively engaged on LinkedIn than I am. But there's a great deal more to supplement that activity. You shouldn't be just all eggs in one basket, should you?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So a strategy that I kind of suggest pretty much all businesses I actually had this conversation with a colleague yesterday who said emergency locksmiths maybe wouldn't want to do remarketing. But yeah, pretty much all businesses I'd suggest do some form of prospecting and some form of remarketing, which is actually something that LinkedIn's improved recently, where you can target people who have engaged with your ad, who have watched your video, or who have started filling out a form on LinkedIn. So obviously, if they started filling out a form, that's a real high intent signal. So you'll probably want to spend quite a lot of money making sure they come back and get across the line. Whereas if somebody's watched 75% of your video, again, that shows that they're in some way interested in what you offer. So it's just a really good opportunity to remarket to those kind of people.
Yeah, and to add to that is, and I think we've got some content on Vertical Lead's website around this, but because of coronavirus, that behaviours have changed significantly, and what we're seeing is there's a significant amount more of top of funnel activity, which is really your brand awareness activity. So people are taking, they're engaging more at that top of funnel and maybe mid funnel, and they're taking a little bit longer to convert in that bottom funnel. So if you're measuring your campaigns only on your conversion rate, you're discounting any of that kind of brand awareness of people getting eyes on your brand as well. So there's always something to be said for the retargeting, remarketing activities that Mike was talking about, but also making sure you're tracking across that whole funnel, across all of your platforms, to actually see what the contribution to your entire conversion rate is across all of your marketing. So don't look at LinkedIn downloads in isolation. Let's see what else is happening, and let's see if there's correlations between increases elsewhere. It's about that total end-to-end optimization and that attribution. Okay, good. Lots of questions. So Sarah, I think it's Sarah, might be Sarah, has kind of asked two similar questions. So she's mentioned that every campaign has got a different account ID, and that in her LinkedIn campaign manager, she's got a different account ID for herself, and then a different one for her business. She's confused as to whether it's better to have only one, but I don't think you can have only one, do you? They are separate entities, isn't that right?
Yeah, so if I've understood that correctly, so how we have it set up is, so I personally obviously have my LinkedIn account, which we then link to our business account manager. So wait, let me just read the question. I have a different account ID. But if you, okay, so I think you've actually got an account ID for your personal.
So maybe set up advertising for her own personal. Can you do that? I didn't know you could do. I suppose you can do if you're. But it might be worth. Sarah, it might be worth emailing Michelle after this, or dropping us a line or a phone call, and we could maybe look into that for you individually and answer that specifically for you, if that's all right. Yeah, excellent. So Tom, to come back, what would you say is a minimum useful budget for testing purposes in terms of A/B testing and what have you?
Yeah, so I'd say there is no real minimum. Obviously, the more you're spending, the quicker you'll get to a significant result. So if you're spending £5 a day and you're getting 1 click per day, it's going to take months before you've actually got any idea of which ad is performing best. That's just if you've got 2 ads running with 1 audience. So yeah, I'd say the kind of minimum I suggested at the beginning of £20 a day, £600 a month, that kind of figure. I think that's probably the very minimum that I would suggest that you test LinkedIn ads with.
It's about volume of data at the end of the day, isn't it? It's about getting a meaningful amount, and if you've only got a few rows of data, then that doesn't really give you an indication of what the market is doing.
Yeah.
Is it better to target and then retarget people with different LinkedIn campaigns, or do you tend to target them with something that gets them into an email funnel and then you continue to target them away from LinkedIn?
So I'd say both, really.
Yeah.
If you can get their email and they're happy to be part of the email funnel, then yeah, that's always best, because essentially once you've got their email, that's kind of free to you as business. Whereas if you're remarketing, you're still paying for those impressions. So yeah, I'd say both, but definitely I always recommend a remarketing campaign in LinkedIn. Because as I said, you can tweak your messaging to make it more specific to somebody that's more aware of the products and services that you offer.
If I could add to that, it sort of goes back to that end-to-end optimization. And so whenever I think about marketing or think about vertical links marketing, I see it as a spinning machine rather than a linear straight line. Okay, and what that means is that you've got around this circle of the machine, you've got entry points at any point. That could be through LinkedIn or retargeting or an exhibition or email or someone phones you or whatever way they enter it. And then they if you've got your marketing working collaboratively, people will spin around in there a number of ways, and they might engage with an email and they might re-engage on LinkedIn. And there's no, for us personally at Vertical Leap, there's averages of course, but there's no set predetermined path of how many touch points they'll engage with before they come back out of that machine and raise their hand and say, look, we'd like to talk about business. So how you visualize it, people visualize things different ways, but I do think you should look at things in a linear fashion of like, I'll get them on LinkedIn and then I'll move them to email and I'll do the marketing email, because actually that might not be how that person works. So I always think it's best to think of marketing as almost like a washing machine that you get people in and throw them inside it, spin them around, and at some point they're going to come back out. Just for the record, I don't put people in washing machines. Michelle's shared quite an interesting article. I say interesting, that sounds arrogant because it's me that wrote it, but there's an article on the site that she shared in the chat that you can go and read about end-to-end optimization. Sarah asked, I'm not sure which, how much can cost for lead for your LinkedIn business page? So I'm not sure what the question is there. What's a good cost per lead for your LinkedIn business page?
Again, it's a good cost per lead. You need to kind of work backwards from what is your average customer lifetime value. So if somebody stays on typically for 18 months and they pay £1,000 a month, you can work out how much a customer's worth. Then how many leads do you need to convert to a customer? And so kind of work backwards from there. So that's obviously very different on different businesses. So what we say, we might say £70 is a good cost per lead, whereas to some businesses they would give their arm to get a £70 lead, whereas other businesses that just wouldn't work for them. So they're again, it's one of those things that's just so dependent on so many different things.
It's unique to each business, absolutely, depending on exactly. Is LinkedIn for selling products versus services, so B2C versus B2B on LinkedIn? Do you think it works?
Yeah, so again, because of it's not something that many business B2C brands do, but you do see ads, and we've seen some successful campaigns run, mainly again because of the highly targeted audience that you can go after. So I think one of my colleagues was speaking about a jewellers in Mayfair. So they may be selling very expensive products. So other platforms, they may not be able to reach the kind of people that they need to. So very senior directors, or it's a good way of targeting by location and by the level of seniority, for example. So for those I'd say for more expensive luxury items, it's probably better than for a lower cost item where Facebook would probably always perform better.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've just got the one last question, which is a good question. Does LinkedIn charge according to the size of the constituency you're targeting? So the number of people, I guess. In which case, can you target active users only? And the point they're trying to make, or the point they're making, is there's an awful lot of people who sign into LinkedIn once and never come back.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so you're either, this is dependent on your audience size. So if you've got a very small audience size, and what should I say? Yeah, essentially you'll get charged if you're on an automated bid and you're targeting 5,000 people, but 2,000 of the people aren't even active, you're going to see a really high frequency. So the same 3,000 people seeing the ads over and over again. So you'll be able to spot that as you're kind of looking at performance, because you'll see a decline in click-through rate, increase in cost per click. So yeah, the important thing there is to make sure that you're targeting a large enough audience. And then if you do start to see a decline in the stats that I just mentioned, that's when you kind of need to step in and make changes to the campaign. Or it might be a case that you need to end that campaign and start a new one, targeting a wider audience. So no, there's no way of you're not going to get impressions of people that aren't active on LinkedIn, which you can kind of see as you manage the campaign when that starts to happen.
Great. Thank you. Right. That seems to be the last of the questions. So thank you, everybody. That was really interesting, I could tell. You can always tell by the volume of questions of how much people engage in it. So yeah, that was this week's. Next week there won't be a tutorial. Next week it's going to be our podcast we'll be letting you all know about. So keep an eye out for that. That's the Search Marketing Podcast. If you do want to contact us at all, we're on hello@vertical. Sorry, I've just dropped something on the floor. hello@vertical-leap.uk. Or you can email Michelle, who sends out the invites to you. You can get in contact there. As I said last week, if you felt like you might want to share these invites with people that don't, that aren't aware of them, please do so. Like everybody gets affected by coronavirus and what it's done to business in different ways. So if you can help us to get our name out by sharing this kind of content with your friends and colleagues and what have you, that'd be fantastic. We really appreciate that. But otherwise, we'll keep you in the loop. Thanks very much. See you soon.
Cheers. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.